Hello everyone and welcome to the session of informatics practices for class 12 students for in the CBSE session of 2019 and 20 and 2021. We are going to have a session on my topics of MySQL that are there in the syllabus as per 2019-20, and we hope that these topics will be there in the syllabus of 2020 and 21 also. So, students, in the MySQL topics, we will be having three major topics over here: order by clause, aggregate functions, and group by clause. Out of these three, order by clause has already been taught to you in, and aggregate function was the last topic that we just studied before the school went off. So, students, for aggregate function, we just revise it once. So aggregate functions were of 5 types: sum, max, min, count, and average. The basic difference between an aggregate function and a single line function being that aggregate functions work on all the cell values that are present within a column, while a single line function works on a one row at a time. Hence, do remember this difference over there. Also, aggregate functions will never work on or operate on a null value. Keeping this thing in mind, we will start with our topic of group by clause. So group by clause is having about three different topics or three major chunks that needs to be studied. One is the use of aggregate functions along with group by clause. The second one being having clause, and the third one being non-group columns under the group by clause. So let us first go through what actually group by clause itself is. So students, let's start with our first topic, that is the group by clause. As you can very well read the definitions over here, that the group by clause is a MySQL command that is used to group the rows that have the same values. Remember the point same value over here. Same values will be grouped that are present in a single column. And remember, it is generally used with select statements, and it will be very efficient if used with aggregate functions. The queries that contain the group by clause are called as grouped queries, and the results that will be returned by such queries will always be in ascending or alphabetical orders. So although it is ordering the values over here, but even if you try and wish to substitute or do it in descending order, it will not happen with group by clause. So if you go for the general syntax for any group by clause statement, it would look something like this. Select the names of the column from the names of the table, and then the columns that will be grouped. Generally for the syllabus or the questions that come to your topics will be having only a single grouping. Nested groupings will not be over there. Nested grouping is a case when more than one columns will be present in the result for group by clause, or sorry, will be present in the group by clause. So nested grouping will be there over. Having is an optional part, so it is not always necessary to put a having condition. So what may be the difference between a having and a group where clause? Where is used to put conditions over single row, whereas the having clause will be placing conditions over the grouped result. Remember, the conditions will be placed over grouped result. So let us just take a simple example of a table named books. So here we have assumed that it has 9 rows and it has 5 columns. The probable data type for book ID and price column may be int, and for book name, author, and abstract column may be varchar or char, whatever it suits. You could make any other table that suits you, but please ensure that you are keeping some values as duplicates in column on which you will be liking to place the group by clause. Now, if we fire a query on this table to see if how many number of books are present with each author, then we'll be doing something like this. So select author name count star from books, group by the author name. So over here you can well see that author name and count star are there, but the important point is group by. So if you do not place a group by over here, these results will not be what you would have expected from here. So do remember the fact that group is always at most necessary. Okay, so let us move on, and now we will move on to the next point over here. The next point being that if and before we move on, just wanted to ensure that you have noticed that although when we were looking into the table of books, the very first book name was Informatics Practices and the first author name was Sumita Arora. Then came R.D. Sharma with Maths and Sumita Arora with Python IP. It is not the very same in the output. The output, as we discussed, is sorted alphabetically, and hence we will be looking more into the fact that the results will always be sorted in alphabetical order. The questions that comes in board, if it comes for output, please ensure that you have given the output in alphabetical order, or else you will not be getting marks that are associated with that particular question. And suppose now, moving a step ahead, if we take another query or take another situation when we may be asked that for all the author names and count and the number of books, we need to see only those books which have from those authors which have more than one books printed against their name. So in such a situation, we will be going after the having clause. So the having clause or the having condition is used with group by. If you are not using group by, I don't see any use of having over there. So group by, and with group by, if you wish to place any condition, you have to use the having clause over there. The having clause will be having condition on the very particular column that are mentioned over here, or it may have condition which is on a column or on using any aggregate function which has not been used over here in the select clause. So it is not necessary to have a condition which is directly relevant to what is present over here in the select. But what may happen if we place a column which is not relevant and which may not be having a direct connection with the group by clause. So suppose here we have this is the MySQL prompt. So suppose if we have placed a condition, so as we have done over here, let me just fire this query again. So as mentioned over here, so if we just look at it, the book ID column is one column which has been mentioned over here, which does not have any direct relation with author name. So in the output, although there are 3 NCERT books with 3 different book IDs, 4, 5 and 6, you only have one over here. The result being ambiguous. It is not wrong, but it is ambiguous. It may be correct in some situations where for something like BBC, it is correct, but for many scenarios, it will be ambiguous, and hence things like this are not taken as an error by MySQL, but rather MySQL will treat things like this as an ambiguous situation, and hence you are always advised to avoid columns which do not have any direct relations with the column on which you have placed a group by condition. Again, we can do nested groupings with something like this. I've done it over here. Just look at it. Though it is not the most relevant of thing that could have been done with the table, but I've just done it to ensure that you understand this. See, here you have 2 columns. First is the author name column, and then is the column named book name. So if we have placed 2 conditions, first on author name and then on book name, and here is your result. So over here, author name, book name, sum price and count star. So over here we have written 4 columns in the select clause, and hence we are having 4 different outputs, all being sorted over both author name and book name. What if we remove one from here? So suppose if I remove book name column from here, what will happen then? See, there is a difference over here in the output. Over here, what will happen is the NCERT books will be shown as 3 different books for English. Although, because we do not have book name over here, the book name column becomes irrelevant. A more relevant query in this situation would have been created if we remove book name column from here, and something like this will come. So this is much more relevant. It shows the price of sum of all the prices for the NCERT books. So if you do a sum of all the prices that are present over here, so 150, 270 and 245, you will get this result, 265. And hence we are doing this by group by clause. So as suggested in the initial point, that the group by clause is used to give results which are summarized and are generally used in industry for such purposes only. Because what table we are using over here is just of 9 rows, but the industry standards in terms of industry standards, the table may have thousands of rows. So over there, group by clause needs to be used to see grouped or aggregate results. So students, this is all that we have over here. I will be sharing this doc file along with this, and I hope that you will be practicing a few more questions. I also hope that you will be having the answer for this question mentioned over here. If there is any problem, you may please contact me through my mail ID. I will also mention it over here. And if you wish to download MySQL, I will also ensure that the link for MySQL will also be pasted in the doc file. Thank you so much.